Arkham TV presents. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. And then, I have never seen anything more astonishing than the way you turn away from Islam and how you lack sound judgment. How can anyone ignore a religion like Islam? The Messenger of Allah Muhammad asked me about you and said, "Where is Khalid?" I replied to him, "Allah will guide him." Then he said, "A man like him cannot fail to understand Islam. If he were to direct all his strength and passion alongside the Muslims against the polytheists, it would be better for him. So make up for what you have missed, my brother, for you have already missed many glorious events." In the 6th year after the Hijrah, or in the year 627, according to the Christian calendar, the Messenger of Allah Muhammad decided to set out for Umrah. 1,400 Muslims went with him. They set out for Mecca, taking with them only light weapons for protection along the way. Our Prophet did everything possible to avoid bloodshed and strictly forbade it to his companions. The Quraysh became afraid for their authority. It seemed to them that the Muslims were coming to wage war against them, to defeat them on their own land once the initiative was in the Muslims' hands. The Quraysh decided that all of this would inevitably lead to a battle between them and flatly refused to let the Muslims pass. They blocked their way to prevent them from entering Mecca. A detachment of 300 horsemen led by Khalid ibn al-Walid set out to meet them. They set up their camp at a place called Qura ul-Gamim. There they waited for the Muslims, determined not to let them enter the sacred territory of the Haram. News of this reached the Messenger of Allah. He understood what the disbelievers were planning, even though he himself was coming only to perform Umrah and for no other reason. At this moment, the insight of the Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, became especially evident. He ordered a small detachment of 20 horsemen to distract Khalid ibn al-Walid, but not to engage him in battle. When Khalid saw the horsemen in front of him, he thought they were the vanguard of the Muslim army, and he knew well that the Muslims were coming to Mecca in great numbers. Meanwhile, the Messenger of Allah led the main group of Muslims along a completely different route through the mountainous areas. The paths there were very narrow, and it was difficult to walk. But thanks to this maneuver, the Prophet successfully bypassed Khalid's positions. When Khalid saw the dust behind him, raised by the Muslims, he realized that they had outflanked him from the rear and immediately retreated to Mecca. The Muslims, meanwhile, continued on their way until they reached the area of Al-Hudaybiyah, where they set up camp. After a few days, the Quraysh became convinced that the Muslims had indeed come only for Umrah and not for war. Negotiations began between the two sides. In the end, they agreed to a truce, which went down in history as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. On behalf of the Quraysh, it was signed by Suhail ibn Amr, and on behalf of the Muslims, by the Prophet himself. The terms of the treaty were as follows. First, a truce was established between the two sides for a period of 10 years. Second, the Muslims would return home this year without performing Umrah, but they could come back and perform it the following year. Third, the Quraysh were not obliged to return to the Muslims anyone who came to them in Mecca after abandoning Islam. Fourth, any person from the Quraysh who came to the Messenger of Allah to accept Islam must be returned, unless his guardian permitted him to emigrate to Medina. Fifth, any tribe has the full right to form an alliance either with the Muslims or with the Quraysh. The Muslims expressed strong dissatisfaction with the third and fourth points of the agreement. Umar ibn al-Khattab was especially outraged. The Muslims stayed in Hudaybiyah for about a week, after which they returned to Medina. A year later, in the 7th year after the Hijrah, in 628, according to the Christian calendar, the Muslims returned to Mecca to perform Umrah, as stipulated in the agreement. The polytheists were required to leave Mecca for 3 days, and they did so. The Quraysh watched the Muslims from the surrounding mountains. The Muslims were dressed in white garments. Among those who watched this majestic scene, standing among the ranks of the disbelievers, was Khalid ibn al-Walid. He observed them closely, his mind filled with thoughts of war. He pondered how their next encounter with the Muslims on the battlefield would unfold. Deep down, he admired the genius of the Messenger of Allah, but he carefully concealed it. doing his utmost to suppress such thoughts within himself. As days passed, significant changes began to take place in Khalid's way of thinking. At first, his thoughts were solely focused on military matters. He dreamed of the glory of great victories and believed he deserved laurels for his feats on the side of the Quraysh. But true victory constantly eluded him. In the Battle of Uhud, he witnessed the discipline and courage of the Muslims, who managed to avoid complete defeat despite his brilliant maneuver. And during the Battle of the Trench, he observed how the Muslims were able to defend themselves. He saw the discipline in their ranks and how the Quraysh army approached Medina like a lion, but returned like a cowardly mouse. During the expedition to Hudaybiyah, when he tried to intercept them, the genius of the Messenger of Allah prevailed over him. In addition, he heard rumors that between the Battle of Uhud and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Muslims carried out 28 expeditions, capturing rich spoils. Every time news of their victories reached Mecca, Khalid thought about it, feeling a secret joy deep inside. Khalid ibn al-Walid began to sincerely admire our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his leadership qualities, character, and the strength of his unique personality. How could Khalid achieve victory if the Quraysh were plagued only by a series of disasters and heavy defeats? Now Khalid's mind was in turmoil. At this time, his brother Al-Walid sent him a letter which said, "In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful." And then, "I have never seen anything more astonishing than the way you turn away from Islam and how you lack sound judgment. How can anyone fail to notice and ignore a religion like Islam? The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, asked me about you and said, 'Where is Khalid?' I replied to him, 'Allah will bring him.' Then he said, 'A man like him cannot fail to understand Islam. If he were to direct all his strength and fury, together with the Muslims, against the polytheists, it would be better for him. So make up for what you have missed, my brother, for you have already missed many glorious events." When Khalid read this letter, it prompted him to set out immediately. His desire to embrace Islam only grew stronger, and the words of the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, filled his heart with joy. The night before his departure, he had a dream in which he was in a narrow, barren, and arid land, and then he emerged into vast green expanses. That same night he took his armor, weapons, saddled his horse, and rushed toward Medina. On the way, Khalid ibn al-Walid met his friend Amr ibn al-As, who was also heading there to embrace Islam. They joined together and continued on their journey until, at last, they reached Medina. Once in Medina, Khalid eagerly awaited his meeting with the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him. But before that, he went and changed into his best clothes to appear before Allah's beloved Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace. When Khalid ibn al-Walid entered upon the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, and saw a smile on his noble face, Khalid's heart softened, and he pronounced the two testimonies of faith. After that, the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said to him, "Praise be to Allah who has guided you to the straight path. I have always seen sharp intelligence in you, and hoped that it would lead you only to good." Then the companions of Khalid approached the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, and all of them also accepted Islam. May Allah's pleasure be upon them. Khalid's faith in this new religion and his sincere acceptance of it became a powerful incentive that gave him even more courage, determination, and purpose. Khalid's conversion to Islam became a tremendous support for this religion. Allah elevated Islam through Khalid, just as he elevated Khalid himself by making him a Muslim. 3 months after embracing Islam, Khalid had the opportunity to prove himself as a warrior of the religion he had accepted. This happened during the Battle of Mu'tah. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you don't miss new videos. Share this video and help spread goodness. Arqam TV. Grow together with us.